who are following on my Facebook page who did not go to the UK embroidery retreat, this is a demo I ran at the retreat. I think I ran it 5 times over the weekend. So it's a lot of fun. So we're going to be making pouches. So get into the thing. Made of candy wrappers. You can use any kind of food wrappers, crisp packets, absolutely anything you like. It's done completely in the hoop, and it is a fully lined pouch. You can see I haven't torn all the stabilizer away yet, but it is fully lined, no seams showing. And the pattern comes currently in 3 sizes. There's an 8x5 size, a 5x6 size, and a 4x4 size. And that's kind of perfect little size for a coin purse or to put your AirPods in. There's also 2 versions. I don't know if you can see, but this one's actually quilted, as is that one. So there's 2 versions of it, either quilted or not quilted. They are completely separate designs with separate instructions, so that you don't have to worry about where you are and what you're doing. The quilted ones are done in 2 hoopings, and the non-quilted ones are done just in a single hooping. There is a little bit of hand finishing because this is going to be birthed, so there will be a little gap in your lining on the inside that you can hand stitch or even glue. So that's the project we're doing today. I will be making the bigger. I've been asked to make an even bigger one, so watch this space. There is also a small mistake in my instructions. I apologize for that. It's something that neither myself nor my testers picked up on, but I discovered it while I was demoing. So I will add the extra step in my instructions and get that sent out. So everyone who's was on the retreat, I'll get that email to you. Anyone who's already purchased the design, by the time I have the correction, I will email that to you. So my instructions usually look pretty similar for all of my embroidery projects. On your first page, you get all the sizes for the project, so you know what size embroidery hoop you need to use. In this particular one, you get a finished pouch size that actually tells you what size the finished pouch will be approximately. And then you get the embroidery size, which tells you how big the project will be for your embroidery hoop. Then on the first page, you get a cutting table. It'll give you all the different sizes of the fabrics you need. You need 4 different fabrics to make this pouch. So first and foremost are the candy wrappers. Like I said, you can use any food wrapper packet. I wouldn't recommend using paper though, because that wouldn't last. And for each piece you're going to have 3 pieces. A little piece that goes up in the top of your pouch, a medium-sized piece, which is for the bottom front of the pouch, and then a larger piece which will be for the back. So you've got your wrapper pieces. Then an optional piece, an optional fabric, is your wadding. I've used fleece. This is actually fusible fleece I'm using because I buy it by the bolt. So I use fusible fleece even when I don't necessarily want it to be fusible. Again, 3 pieces, a little one for the top, medium size for the bottom, and then big piece for the back. Then to protect your candy wrappers, we're using a clear or transparent vinyl. Now, I buy this one off of Amazon. It doesn't tell me what the thickness is, but I reckon it's somewhere between sort of 50 or 60 microns. It's quite thin, but like thicker than a Ziploc bag would be. You're not gonna poke a hole in that too easily. So, but something too sturdy will be really hard to turn through. Your final fabric is your lining fabric. Now this one's slightly different in that you have the smallest piece again is for the top of the pouch, but then your biggest piece is for the bottom front of the pouch, and the medium-sized piece is for the back. And this is where you may need an extra piece. So my cutting table tells you just one piece. I've cut two, because if your wrappers aren't quite big enough, I want you to be able to use any wrapper you want, even if it's slightly smaller. You'll see with this one, the wrapper was a little bit small, so you've got like purple showing. That's actually the lining fabric showing through. Other reasons might be some pouches have like a window through them, so you'll see the fabric through that. So I try very hard to make it in such a way you can use any sweetie wrappers. You could even use multiple little wrappers, place them all over the place, and then you'll have the fabric showing through. So that's why your front fabric is the bigger piece, because that's going to get folded in half. And the one half is the inside of the pouch, and the other side is behind the wrappers. So you get that fabric showing through if there's any windows or your piece isn't quite big enough. So your piece doesn't have to be exactly the right size. It can be smaller. If you're using lots of bits and pieces, I would suggest you do the quilted version, because it'll hold all the pieces nicely in place. You can of course use some glue to glue them to the lining fabric if you prefer. Okay, get those pieces together. Right, the final material to talk about is the stabilizer. Get these all out of the way. We have so many sweets in this house at the moment. All the wrappers I've been using up. Okay, so I'm going to be using a Tearaway stabilizer because you want to be able to remove all the interfacing, all the stabilizer. It does show, as you can see when I showed you this one, you can see the bits of stabilizer there. So you do want to be able to remove that. I haven't removed it all because it's kind of boring watching someone remove it, so I will do that later. You can use a wash away stabilizer if you want to. The problem is you've got layers of plastic. So you've got plastic on top of plastic, and if any water gets inside there, you may not be able to get it out. So that's why I don't recommend a wash away. One of my testers did use a heat away or iron away stabilizer, which she said worked very well. I've never tried that, so I'll have to get myself some and give that a go. So I'm placing the stabilizer on my hoop, and then we can start the embroidery. I am using just a regular polyester embroidery thread. You can actually use regular sewing thread to make this as well, because it's only running stitches. There's no dense areas or anything that could cause problems. So yeah, regular sewing thread is absolutely fine. I like to use with these kind of projects, any in the hoop projects, I do like to use the pulling up the bobbin thread method. Any projects I do, like tea towels, anything that you can see the back, I do that. So once the needle is kind of in the right position for this first step, I pull my bobbin up and then I can tell it to go. And I don't have any snips. Where are my snips? So in all my embroidery projects, there are numbers down the side. Those numbers correspond with the color numbers on your embroidery designs. So step 1 will be color 1, color 2, color 3, and so on. So it should be easy to follow along. Go. So the first step here, if you can see it, is a position stitch. The position stitch for the top of the pouch, and we are going to start with the lining. So we're going to take our smallest piece and we're going to fold it in half, wrong sides together. So we've got the right sides out, and we're just going to finger press it don't iron it because we do actually want it to lay flat again. So we're just going to finger press it. And we're going to position it to the top of that stitch line, along the line. And the ends should match the two ends of that stitch line. And then we're going to let it fold open so that stitch line runs up the center of that fabric. And then we're going to grab some painter's tape, decorator's tape, washi tape, whatever you prefer to use. And tape it down. Please feel free to ask questions as I go. I can see the comments. Hopefully I'll see your questions. So we're going to tape that down, and then the next step is going to stitch down the center of that to hold it in place. Now it's stitched down the center. Don't worry if that line doesn't fall absolutely exactly on that finger press line you did. There is allowance. It does come in Jeff format. I think I've got Jeff, Pez, VP3, XXX, EXP, and I'm sure I've missed one. There are quite a few. The see-through plastic, it's about 50 or 60 micron, I would hazard a guess at. I purchased mine from Amazon. What I'll do is afterwards I'll stick a link on for where I purchased it. It was like £3.75, I think, for a whole meter, so it's quite a good price. Unfortunately, I've been buying it for ages, and I've looked and looked, it doesn't say how thick it is. But if any of you have ever had a rain cover for a pushchair, it's kind of about that thickness. Okay, so that's now stitched in place. And we're going to take our first little piece of fleece or wadding. This is optional. You do not need to add fleece or wadding. And in fact, I don't even give the sizes for it in the small one because it just makes it impossible to birth. You're going to lay it the bottom along the stitch line and make sure you have about equal distance on either side. It is smaller because I'm keeping it out of the seam allowance. So we're going to fold it over, finger press, and then we're going to tape that in place. This is quite springy because of the fleece underneath. It does like to move, so I'm quite generous with my masking tape to keep that in place because I don't want it to move. Pretty much taping the whole thing down. There we go. Okay, now it's going to stitch around and baste that down. So there were some really fun pouches made at the retreat. Someone collected up every time they had a biscuit with their tea. They kept a little biscuit packet, and they've made a pouch with all those biscuit packets. I so wish I'd kept mine. Didn't even think of it. And someone else was saying they're going to make one with their dog's treat packets, and then they'll use it to keep the treats in, which I thought was a nice idea as well. Okay. So that's the top of the lining. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for the bottom half of the pouch. Normally I wouldn't take this in and out of my machine for every step, so don't feel you have to. But obviously I want you guys to see what I'm doing. So now we're going to use the biggest piece of our lining fabric. Someone else was invited to eat loads of biscuits so she could have the wrappers. Yeah, I have to say that I have eaten my fair share of chocolates that I've bought, but most of it is in a big bowl that I'm hoping the rest of the family will eat. So we're going to fold it in half. If I remember correctly, this piece is square, so it doesn't matter which way you do it. Finger press, and we're going to offer it up to that line. It should meet end to end and the fold along the line. And again, we're going to fold it open. I was very blasé and said I'm not going to bother taping it in one of my demos because it's such a big piece of fabric, it's not going to move, and it moved. So I'm taping it. Learn from my mistakes. Okay, and then it's going to baste down the middle. It's quite fun. I'm seeing this, was it Jan? She made a book cover using this technique with the pouch wrappers. It looks really cool. I'm going to have to make one of those. Like the book covers by Liz. Okay, so now we're going to take our medium-sized piece of fusible fleece. Again, we're going to put the top edge of it along that line of stitching and get it centered so that the two sides are even. And I reuse this tape. And to finger press that crease a bit. Tape it down well. Now, this one doesn't need to be taped quite as thoroughly as the top one was, but when it comes around the corner, these corners kind of want to move, so I try and make sure that the corners are quite well taped. Ouch. Yeah, you can never use too much tape. I do try to reuse my bits of tape, but when I'm demoing, it's too hard to remember. I end up with bits all over the place. Okay, and now it's going to stitch around the outside of that. Bits off. Okay, that behaved itself well. Now I'm not going to take it out this time, but the next step is the zipper placement. Thanks, Diana. Oh, the retreat was amazing. If you can ever go, I absolutely recommend it. Where's that thread? Okay, so now it has stitched out a three-sided box. So it is stitched across that short side, but this short side it has not stitched across. Now that is because we're going to fit our zipper, and we want the closed end of the zipper. You can use zipper tape as well. I use it all the time. I use a size 3 zipper. Yep, I do. There's my bin. So yeah, you can use a number 3 zipper tape, a dress zipper. Preferably a smaller zip because you're less likely to break a needle as it stitches over the tape because it's finer. You can use a number 5, but I know a couple of people didn't broke a needle. Also be very careful. The zipper has a metal stop. If your zipper's long enough, it should stick well past the side. I think I said an 11-inch zip for this one. I'm going to cut that stop off because I don't want any chance of stitching through it accidentally. I'm going to place my zipper. It needs to be, whoops, right side up, at least to that line, preferably stick it a little bit past. I tend to be quite generous with my zippers. I've frozen. Am I still frozen? Can you guys hear and see me? Oh, that's not good. Okay. Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to tape the 2 ends of my zipper down. Again, making sure that the side with the zipper pull is on the open side of the box and well outside. Make sure if you're using an zipper tape, you don't pull your zipper pull right off. If you're using a number 3, it should fit perfectly between the stitch lines. That's too small. And then these zippers have a tendency to kind of want to push out the way when the embroidery foot goes along it. So I always put a little bit of tape on either side of center just to make sure it behaves. You can use double-sided quilter's tape, the wash-away type. That doesn't gum your needles up. I don't use it at this point. I'm quite happy with masking tape. And now it's going to stitch all the way around that zipper except for the side that that zipper pull is. Whoops. So yeah, there was a couple all the way from Jersey. I myself stayed an extra couple of nights. I arrived on the Thursday and only left on the Monday. So I got about a 4-hour drive. But yeah, it's worth it. Such a great weekend. And you spend way too much money as well, so the shops are just fabulous. So much fun stuff to buy. Fun stuff to learn. Although I think the best part is just meeting people in person. It's just nice. I've been friends with so many people on Facebook for ages now. And actually meeting the physical person was awesome. Okay. Alright, so that's the lining done. What have I done to my snips? bits of tape that got sewn over. These edges there getting all a bit frayed. They will be cut off later, so don't worry too much about them. I don't know if you can see as well, but my fabrics don't quite meet their 100%. Absolutely fine. I've made allowance for that. Okay, now we are going to start adding our vinyl. So once again, we're going to start at the top of the pouch. So you're going to use a piece of clear vinyl. Really hard to show you guys. Just watch if, in case you're using a vinyl that's been printed on. I know you can get ones that have lovely designs on them. Make sure you're getting it the right way up. So kind of imagine if it's going to be the top piece, flip it downwards. And we're going to be aligning what would be the bottom edge of the vinyl with the top edge of the zipper tape. Now, you can make these pouches from any material you want. You don't have to make them from candy wrappers. You can make them out of faux leather, just fabric, canvas, pretty much anything you want. You would just substitute any fabric you're using for the transparent vinyl. So you follow the cutting table for the transparent vinyl, and you just wouldn't put the candy wrappers in, because obviously you wouldn't see them. So you just skip those altogether. Okay, so I'm aligning. See if I can get the light to shine on it. There we go. The bottom edge of the vinyl with the top edge of the zipper. And give it a bit of tape to hold it in place. And it's going to stitch that down. Yeah, I actually got I think I gave that pouch away. I got one of those really big packs of M&Ms at Costco. You don't see them very often, but I picked one up the other day. I have a feeling I gave that one away though. Those big pouches are really good for these. Okay, now we are going to attach our first piece of wrapper. Now this is where I am going to use a piece of double-sided tape because it just makes it easier. So if you haven't used this before, it is called quilter's tape. It's 1/4 of an inch thick, wide, and it is wash away. So obviously if you're doing anything it's washable, it'll go away, but it actually doesn't gum up the needle of the embroidery machine at all. So you can stitch through it without any worries. So I'm putting the tape along the top edge, well, on top of the clear vinyl that's along the top edge of the zipper. The only thing with this tape is it does dry out really quickly, so you do need to keep it in a plastic pouch when you're not using it. Thank you, Diana. Yeah, I was hoping for slightly different views for what I got, but I'm glad they're working. I'd like to have got myself on the camera a bit better. I need to get some different tripods. Okay, so I have attached that wrapper along that stitch line that we just attached the transparent vinyl. So the bottom edge is going to follow along that stitch line and keep it centered side to side. This one is going to be a bit short, so I'm going to get a little bit of red showing on either side, but I'm absolutely fine with that. Then we're going to flip the vinyl up and give it a good finger press. So now our candy wrapper is sandwiched between fabric and the vinyl. And then tape that down. And then it's going to top stitch along the zipper. Yes, I'll do that. I'll put the link again at the end. Okay. Now we're going to do exactly the same for the bottom half of the pouch. It's more than half, I guess. So it's our medium-sized piece of vinyl, and we're going to align. Oh, lots of hairs. Okay. We're going to align what would be the top edge of the vinyl, if you had print on it, with the bottom edge of the zipper tape, making sure it's aligned left to right. Put a bit of tape on to hold it in place. So if you can see that. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to put some double-sided tape down. Now the top of the candy wrapper is now going to go along that stitch line. Get it as close as you can. I quite like for that stitch line to just completely disappear. And then we're going to fold our transparent vinyl over it. Ah, thanks, Julie. Give it a good finger press and tape it down. And it'll top stitch along the zipper. Okay, so our zipper is now installed, and this is arguably one of the most important steps. Open your zipper. You want to move the zipper pull to within the embroidery area, and you also want to try and get the pouch open as far as possible for later birthing, but you also want to make sure that that zipper pull isn't going to get in the way of further stitching. So the stitch line is going to be just outside that pouch. So you want to make sure that your zipper pull, especially if you're using a bigger one, isn't getting too close to the seam line, so it stays well inside the pouch. Okay, once that's done, we're going to stitch all the way around to keep all those layers basted in place. Is going to stitch across the zipper now, so that's why you need to get the zipper in place before this step. I can't resist getting my fingers in there even when I taped it down. So just be careful if you do this. Don't stitch over your fingers. Haven't done it yet. Not good. Okay. So now at this point in the instructions, I say again, make sure that you have moved your zipper pull because there's only one little thing to unstitch at this point. But now we're going to be adding our backing. Now, if you were doing the quilted version of this pouch, you will have made the back in the first hooping. And then this would have been the second hooping. At that point, it would have done the quilting. So then when you're adding the back, it's this quilted back that you would then be putting on top. Obviously, having removed the excess stabilizer. So now we're going to add the back for the non-quilted one in separate pieces. So first goes down your vinyl, and it should align quite nicely with the fabric that you have underneath. And it's quite, you know, kind of wants to stick to the other vinyl, so that's usually fine just like that. Then, if your pouch is big enough, you would put your wrapper down. And that would be fine on its own. Mine is not big enough. I am going to see that the stitch line will kind of come around there where the edge of the fleece comes up to. I can kind of see where it is. And my wrapper is not big enough. So this is where the extra piece of fabric comes in. You can tape that down to keep it in place if you like. So I'm going to put a piece of fabric on top to make sure that I don't have any innards showing. So that's that extra piece of fabric that currently isn't in the instructions. And then on top of that, you're going to place your wadding or fleece, which should be the same size. Okay, so I'm going to have a quick peek to make sure everything is where I want it to be. That has moved. I really don't want to tape it because I'm lazy. Okay. Once you've done that, you should still have one piece of lining fabric left over, which will be used later. This does need to get taped in place quite well. So there's lots of layers. It will want to shift and move. If you've got quite a large zip pull, you want to make sure you kind of push it down around that as well. That'll be all right. I'll just tear it off. Okay. And now it's going to stitch all the way around with a bean stitch, which is a triple stitch. I just broke my needle. It's a first for everything. Do that. Okay, so now we're going to get the bean stitch. While that's going, are there any questions? Oops. So that's gone all the way around with a bean stitch. And now we're going to turn our hoop upside down. Now you can see that's where the zipper is. If I took that stabilizer away, you'd be able to see the zip. I think you need to know your machine. I don't slow my machine down with this kind of work at all. But yeah, if you know your machine and its capabilities, there's absolutely nothing wrong with slowing it down. Okay, so now we're going to place our final piece, which is our back lining, and it's going to go face down onto the back stabilizer. Thank you, Sally. And we're just going to align. You should be able to see it through the back. And now we're going to tape it down. Remember, this is going on the back of the stabilizer. When I tape on the back of the stabilizer, I don't tear it, because I find those torn edges really like to curl. And then you slide your hoop in place and the tape sticks to the bed and rolls off, and you end up with dog ears and such. So I cut the ends when I'm working on the back. Just slightly less prone to curling if you cut them. I was asked before if you can use spray adhesives. If that's what you're familiar with, you absolutely can use them. I don't like using spray adhesives unless I need to. My lungs don't like them. But you absolutely can use them if that's what you like to use. Yeah, the tape loves curling. So as you can see, it's just a little less prone to it. And then I always turn it over again and give it a good press from the back. Make sure it's really stuck. Okay, and now this is the last embroidery step. It's going to do a bean stitch, but it's going to leave a gap at the bottom. Okay, you can kind of see, make sure it hasn't curled up. I think it's because when you tear, it puts tension on the tape and it kind of stretches it just a bit, and I think that's why it curls up more. I love being able to apply physics to sewing. Lots of fun. Oh dear. Please work. Are we back? Seem to have cut out. Are you guys still getting the video? Yeah, it seemed to have dropped the signal there for a minute, so just see if we can catch up. Okay, I think we're back. Okay. I think something happened on my end because I can actually see it dropped, but I think we're back now. I hope. Okay, so that's the last step of the embroidery. So I'm going to remove all the tape. Yep, I'm going to turn it. Just trying to make sure the video is working. Okay, you can see the back is nice and flat. I keep going the wrong way. And we can remove it from the hoop. And remove the outside of the tearaway. Okay, now we're going to trim, if you've used the wadding, we're going to trim the excess wadding from the seam allowance. I like to use my double bend scissors for that. So when I'm trimming, be it seam allowances or applique, I kind of let the scissors, I pull on what I'm cutting and then just let the scissors do the work. Okay. Now I'm going to trim my zipper. I like to leave my zipper quite long. That bit that's sticking out there, I will actually leave it as long as that. A lot of designers will say just cut it off at the 1/4 inch along with everything else. I don't like to do that because zipper is quite stiff and it doesn't like to bend. And I find if you leave a longer bit, it bends more easily and actually behaves better. Yeah, using a hairdryer is probably a good idea, I'm sure. Okay, so I'm going to leave that zipper. It's about 1 inch. I'm happy with that. I would never make it shorter than 1/2 inch. So I'm going to cut the other end off to about the same spot. Now I have a feeling I haven't put my lighters back, so I would normally just melt the ends a little bit. Oh. Oh, it keeps dropping. Okay, looks like it might be catching up now. It wants me to set the frame rate. I'm not setting the frame rate. Okay, I think we might be back. Okay, now I'm going to trim all the way around, but I'm not going to trim the actual zippers. trim the front and the back. We're going to be trimming it to a quarter of an inch. Don't cut the zipper. Okay. Okay, so that's just trimming around the edges. Now I am going to use pinking shears. I didn't use them at the retreat because I forgot to pack them. Whoops, just bumped the camera, sorry. Sorry. Sit still. There we go. So dressmaking trick on these curves in this direction, convex curves, you don't want to just snip once. You actually want to take a wedge out like that, and that allows that corner, can you see, it's a wedge cut out, that allows, once they fold over, then all those seams don't sit on top of each other and keep it slimmer. I wouldn't use pinking shears on bigger bags, but things like a pouch, I'm quite happy to use pinking shears. And I will just go around each of the corners with my pinking shears. Okay, again, being careful not to actually snip your zipper tape. So I will do the rest with my scissors. One there. Okay, you also don't want to snip too close to your seam allowance because you don't want any raw ends pulling through your seam. Okay, let's get rid of that mess. And now it is time to turn it. So I like to focus on the two corners that are furthest from the opening first. I like to get my thumbs really up in there and then push it inwards. I find my rule of thumb is when I'm doing corners, I don't ever sort of half do a corner and then come back to it. Once I start on a corner, that corner must be completely through. Just makes it easier in the end to get a nice neat corner. So get right in there, push it in. Okay, once I've got those two corners in, then comes the fun part of pushing it all through that opening. You can scrunch it actually quite a lot. The plastic does relax with a bit of time. Again, you could use your hairdryer or something just to help get some creases out that might occur. Okay, so you can see that corner is out quite nicely. And there's the second corner. once most of it is flipped through, then I can focus on those last two corners. One. Okay. Now you do want to get it quite flat at this point because we're going to be pulling out the tearaway stabilizer. So I usually start from the bottom because that one pulls out quite easily. Then I can tear it off. Then I can get into this one. And tear that away. And then you can kind of work your way up, tearing that one off, then the next one. And it's quite simple. I'm not going to make you watch all that because it is terribly boring. So I'm going to go straight in and get the zipper done. Okay, when you're tearing this stabilizer from around the zipper, you will find a couple of loose threads. Those were from the initial positioning line, so don't panic. Nothing's come undone. That is expected. They should just pull out. Okay. Right, now you need to finish off the hole in your lining. So I do like to hand sew those, but I do usually use a bit of glue to hold it in place. So I will place a bit of glue along the raw edge and then stick it down so it's quite far down the seam allowance, and then I can still stitch that together to look nice. But I'm not going to do that right now, and I haven't unpacked my glue yet either. So now you just want to kind of get your zipper open the rest of the way, and then we can flip it the right way around. I like to do these top corners first because there's nothing else in your way on the other side. Get those nice, and then do the bottom two corners. There, except for the opening in the lining, is a finished pouch. So spend a bit more time getting that corner right. So I like to use a bone folder. That's my favorite pokey tool. So that one's definitely not quite right. There we go. Okay, there's a finished pouch. Once you've removed all the stabilizer, you'll see the inside is lovely, nicely lined. I've made most of mine with Easter wrappers, and I actually put the sweeties then back inside and gift them to the children and my families and friends. They'll all be getting one of these this year. I think it's just a fabulous little project, really cute. So I hope you enjoyed watching that. Thank you, Cheryl. Oh yeah. When you do the quilted one, you've got all those little pockets to tear out. It does take a bit longer, but if you kind of always sort of work from one side across to the other, so you're always working with some raw edges, it does pull out a little bit easier, but it is quite satisfying. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'm going to try and do regular live videos, so hopefully I'll see you again with something different next week. Thanks everyone. I will post another link for the pattern on Etsy as well.